Hi, I'm Fran Chismar, Sultan of Sales at Pinelands Nursery. I'm also the co-host of the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast. So the last couple weeks, there was a huge victory to be had in the form of banning invasive plants. So an invasive plant is an exotic plant that's not from this area or this region or country that was brought over and has such ideal conditions that it is left unchecked and can take over. It can choke out our native our native flora and can cause major damage to our ecosystem. So Delaware banned 37 plants, one of those being English ivy. So I've had a lot of people say, well, English ivy is a ground cover. How can that be invasive? I have it in my yard, but I don't see it popping up in my neighbors' yards. So you have a very good point. So right here behind me, you have a mixture of ground covers. You have periwinkle and you have English ivy. And for this application, it was being used basically to hold the slope of this erosion. You can see it's being neatly weed whacked. It's being kept out of the yard, kind of being kept in check. So you're thinking, all right, this really, yeah, how is this invasive? So if you look a little closer, you can really see it starting to climb up the fence here. You can start to see it climb up the tree trunks here, the white pine. You can kind of see like the weight of it has started to knock the fence over here. Now the fence is older and you can see it's definitely had seen better days. So you're like, all right, you know, maybe you should have done a better job at keeping it off the fence. So if you look at the tree behind me, some of these larger oaks right here, you can kind of see it's very well made its way up the trunks of these trees. And you know, I've seen conflicting reports whether or not this is parasitic. Some say that it only attaches to the bark and it's really only the weight of the plant that's damaging, that it doesn't kind of tap into the cambium. You can kind of see where there's no leaves. These had been cut before. It had been controlled. They tell you not to actually pull the old vines off because it could do more damage by pulling bark off. So it had already been taken care of once and kind of grew back. You know, but I've also seen conditions where, you know, let's just say this fence, you can kind of see it stops. Two sections had fallen over that were riddled with ivy. Those sections definitely had less moisture. The wood was far more rotted than the sections with less. And you kind of see this property here had been left vacant for a few years. And you can kind of see how it left unchecked. It kind of took over. It's getting ready to go into the shed. It's kind of taken over this dog thing. So it definitely has a very aggressive nature. And I kind of applaud Delaware for doing this. There are native ground covers. You know, there were 3 ground covers that were banned on this bill, and the other 2 being periwinkle, which if you're not familiar with it, this is it right here. And you know, obviously it's not as aggressive as the ivy, but possibly the ivy kept it in check. And the other one being Japanese Pachysandra, the native Pachysandra procumbens. It's a great option for ground cover, and that's something you could definitely use in its place if you're looking for something like that. So I think this was definitely a great win. Here's actually a native Rosa Sharon. This was also banned, and this was not planted here. It volunteered in. So what's troubling to me is right behind here you can see this beautiful natural area, oaks and ash and plenty of birds. You can hear the birds in the background. There's a dogwood getting ready to bloom, and this ivy left unchecked is going to creep into that natural area and slowly invade and take over and make that weaker. Our natural areas are already weak for deer pressure and development and so many other things, and it's important now to make these decisions. And it's nice to see that Delaware is on the forefront and they've actually done this. So it was a major win. This time of the year is a great time to look for these invasives. If you're going to try to remove them, you're able to identify them a little bit better. You don't have to rip everything out of your yard that's not native, but start with something that's invasive and replace it with something that's native and help your ecosystem. So for more great tips, make sure you join our Facebook group at Native Plants Healthy Planet. And check out the podcast for great conversations as far as native plants and invasives. You can find us wherever you consume your podcast, Apple Music, Spotify, Stitcher, and so forth. So thank you again. I am Fran Chismar, the Sultan of Sales at Pinelands Nursery. I'll see you next time. Keep it native.